Laura had always been a hard worker. From the time she was old enough to hold down a job, she'd done whatever it took to make ends meet. Life hadn't handed her much, but it had taught her how to survive. She worked 2 jobs in Chicago, a city that never seemed to sleep. By day, she cleaned offices at a corporate building downtown. By night, she served drinks and appetizers at an upscale restaurant called the Velvet Lounge. It wasn't glamorous work, but it paid the bills, or at least most of them. The Velvet Lounge was known for catering to the wealthy elite of Chicago. Politicians, business tycoons, and celebrities often dined there, their expensive suits and glittering jewelry making Laura feel even more invisible than usual. But she didn't mind being overlooked. In fact, she preferred it. Being invisible meant no one asked too many questions about her life outside of work or why she always carried a small notebook in her apron pocket. Laura's second job brought her into contact with Richard, the owner of the Velvet Lounge. He was a tall man in his late 50s with sharp features and an air of authority that made people either respect him or resent him. To Laura, he was simply her boss, a demanding one at that, but not someone she thought much about beyond ensuring. Her shifts went smoothly. Richard rarely spoke to the waitstaff unless something went wrong, so when he approached Laura one evening after closing, she felt a flicker of unease. "Laura," he said, his tone clipped but not unkind. "I need you to stay late tomorrow." She blinked, caught off guard. Staying late wasn't part of her usual routine. "Is everything okay?" she asked cautiously. Yes, nothing to worry about," Richard replied, waving a hand dismissively. "I'm hosting a private party at my estate tomorrow night. I want you to help with the catering staff." Laura hesitated. Working at Richard's estate sounded like a step up from her usual duties, but she couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to this request than met the eye. Still, saying no wasn't really an option. "Of course, Mr. Richard. What time should I be there?" 7 sharp, he said, already turning away. "Don't be late." The next evening, Laura arrived at Richard's mansion just as instructed. The house was enormous, with towering columns and windows that gleamed under the setting sun. It looked more like a museum than a home. As she stepped inside, she was greeted by the hum of conversation and the clinking of glasses. Waiters bustled around carrying trays of hors d'oeuvres and champagne flutes. Laura quickly found her place among the catering team, helping set up tables and arrange food platters. Despite the chaos, Laura couldn't help but notice the opulence surrounding her. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling, casting warm light over polished marble floors. Paintings adorned the walls, each one probably worth more than what Laura earned in a year. She tried not to stare, reminding herself to focus on her task. As the guests began arriving, Laura retreated to the edges of the room, staying out of sight while still keeping an eye on the buffet table she was assigned to monitor. Most of the attendees were dressed in designer outfits, their laughter echoing through the spacious hall. Laura felt out of place in her simple black uniform, but she reminded herself that she was here to work, not to mingle. At one point, Richard appeared, near the grand piano in the corner of the room. He was talking animatedly with a group of men, gesturing toward the instrument as if explaining something. Laura watched curiously, wondering what they were discussing. Then, to her surprise, Richard turned and scanned the room until his gaze landed on her. For a moment, Laura froze, unsure why he was looking at her. Before she could react, Richard motioned for her to come closer. Her stomach tightened as she approached, clutching her tray tightly. "Laura," Richard said, his voice loud enough to draw attention from nearby guests. "Do you play the piano?" Laura blinked, startled by the question. No, sir, I don't." Richard smirked, clearly amused by her response. "Nonsense, everyone knows how to play a little, don't they? Come on, give it a try. Entertain us for a bit." Laura shook her head, panic rising in her chest. "I really can't, Mr. Richard, I've never—" "Oh, don't be shy," he interrupted, cutting her off. His tone was playful, but there was an edge to it that made her uneasy. "It's just for fun. No one expects you to be perfect." Before Laura could protest further, Richard ushered her toward the piano. Guests began to take notice, some chuckling softly as they realized what was happening. A few exchanged amused glances, clearly expecting a spectacle. Laura felt her cheeks burn with embarrassment. She wanted to run, to disappear, but she knew that wouldn't solve anything. Instead, she forced herself to sit down on the bench, her hands trembling as she faced the keys. For a moment, silence filled the room. All eyes were on her, waiting to see what she would do. Laura stared at the piano, her mind racing. She hadn't touched an instrument in years, not since her mother passed away and life became too overwhelming to think about music. But now, sitting here under the weight of everyone's expectations, memories came flooding back. Her mother had taught her how to play when she was a child. They used to spend hours together at their old upright piano, practicing scales and learning simple songs. Music had been their escape, a way to forget about the struggles of daily life, even if only for a little while. After her mother died, Laura stopped playing altogether. The pain of losing her was too fresh, and without her guidance, Laura didn't know how to continue. But tonight, something stirred within her. Maybe it was the pressure of the situation, or maybe it was the memory of her mother's voice encouraging her to keep going. Whatever it was, Laura found herself placing her fingers on the keys. At first, the notes were hesitant, shaky. She played a single chord, then another, testing the waters. The room grew quieter as people realized she wasn't completely clueless. Some leaned forward, intrigued, while others whispered to each other, speculating about what would happen next. Laura closed her eyes, letting the sound guide her. Slowly, tentatively, she began to play. The melody started soft, almost hesitant, but gradually gained confidence. Notes flowed together, weaving a tapestry of sound that seemed to echo through the room. Laura's fingers moved instinctively, guided by muscle memory and emotion rather than conscious thought. She wasn't thinking about the crowd anymore. She was lost in the music, transported to a place where none of this mattered. When she finally opened her eyes, she saw that the entire room had fallen silent. Guests were staring at her, their expressions ranging from shock to admiration. Even Richard looked taken aback, though he quickly masked his surprise with a grin. "Well, I'll be damned," he said, clapping his hands together. "Looks like we've got ourselves a hidden talent." Laura stood up slowly, her legs feeling wobbly beneath her. She wasn't sure what to say or do. Applause broke out, tentative at first but growing louder as more people joined in. Someone whistled, and another guest called out, "Encore!" Laura managed a weak smile, her heart pounding in her chest. She hadn't expected any of this. All she'd wanted was to get through the night without drawing attention to herself. Instead, she'd become the center of it. As the applause continued, Laura noticed a man standing near the edge of the crowd. He was younger than most of the other guests, with a kind face and thoughtful eyes. Unlike the others, he wasn't clapping or cheering. Instead, he was watching her intently as if trying to understand something. When their eyes met, he gave her a small nod, almost imperceptible, before slipping away into the crowd. Laura didn't know who he was, but for some reason, his presence lingered in her mind long after the moment passed. Little did she know, this encounter would change her life in ways she couldn't yet imagine. For now, though, all she could do was breathe deeply and remind herself that she had survived the ordeal. The rest of the night blurred together, a whirlwind of congratulations, questions, and curious stares. Laura handled it as best she could, grateful when the party finally wound down and she was able to retreat to the safety of her small apartment. As she lay in bed that night, replaying the events in her mind, Laura couldn't help but wonder what might come next. Had tonight been a fluke, a fleeting moment of recognition? Or was it the beginning of something bigger? Only time would tell. The morning after the party, Laura woke up feeling like she'd been caught in a dream. She lay in bed for a while, staring at the ceiling, replaying the events of the previous night in her mind. The grand piano, the spotlight, the applause, it all felt surreal. She wasn't sure whether to feel proud or embarrassed. On one hand, she had surprised everyone, including herself. On the other hand, she couldn't shake the memory of Richard's smug expression when he pushed her into the spotlight. Laura got out of bed and started her day as usual, but her thoughts kept drifting back to the party. She wondered what people were saying about her now. Would they remember her as the waitress who played the piano? Or would they forget about her as soon as the next big event came along? She told herself it didn't matter. It was just one night, and life would go on as it always had. But deep down, Laura knew something had shifted. For the first time in years, she had allowed herself to revisit a part of her past that she had locked away. The music. Her mother had been her biggest supporter, always encouraging her to practice and telling her she had a gift. After her mother passed away, Laura stopped playing altogether. Life became too overwhelming, and without her mom's guidance, she didn't know how to keep going. But last night, sitting at that grand piano, she had felt a spark of something she thought was long gone. Later that afternoon, Laura headed to work at the Velvet Lounge. As she entered the restaurant, she noticed some of her co-workers whispering and glancing her way. At first, she thought nothing of it. Gossip was common in places like this. But then Maria, one of her closest friends at work, pulled her aside. "Laura, did you hear?" Maria asked, her eyes wide with excitement. "People are talking about you." "About me?" Laura frowned, confused. "What do you mean?" "About last night," Maria explained. "Someone posted a video of you playing the piano at Mr. Richards' party online. It's everywhere." Laura's heart sank. "What? A video? Who posted it?" "I don't know," Maria admitted. "But it's gotten so many views already. People are calling you amazing, talented. Some are even saying you should be famous." Laura groaned, rubbing her temples. "That's the last thing I wanted." Maria tilted her head, studying Laura's face. "Why are you upset? This could be a good thing for you. Maybe someone will discover your talent and give you an opportunity." "I'm not looking for opportunities," Laura muttered. "I just want to do my job and get through the day." Maria sighed, sensing Laura's discomfort. "Look, I get it, you're not used to attention. But maybe this is your chance to do something different. Don't shut the door before you even see what's on the other side." Laura didn't respond. She appreciated Maria's optimism, but she couldn't shake the feeling that this whole situation was spinning out of control. Still, she forced herself to focus on work, pushing the thought of the video to the back of her mind. As the evening wore on, Laura noticed more and more customers recognizing her. Some approached her table to compliment her performance, while others simply stared curiously. One man even asked if she could play something for him right there in the restaurant. Laura politely declined, explaining that she wasn't a professional musician. By the end of her shift, Laura was exhausted, not just physically but emotionally. She wanted nothing more than to go home, crawl into bed, and forget about everything that had happened. But fate had other plans. When Laura arrived, at her apartment building, she found a note taped to her door. It was handwritten and addressed to her by name. Curious, she unfolded it and read the message inside. "Dear Laura, your performance last night was breathtaking. I've been searching for someone with your unique talent to collaborate on a project I'm working on. Please call me if you're interested in discussing further. Sincerely, Daniel Harper." Below the message was a phone number. Laura stared at the note, her heart racing. Daniel Harper? The name sounded familiar, but she couldn't place it. She went inside her apartment and sat down at the kitchen table, staring at the note for several minutes. Finally, curiosity got the better of her. She picked up her phone and searched for Daniel Harper Chicago. Within seconds, she found dozens of articles and interviews featuring a man described as one of the city's most successful music producers. According to the articles, Daniel had worked with some of the biggest names in the industry and was known for discovering hidden talents. Laura's hands trembled as she reread the note. Was this real? Could someone like Daniel Harper actually be interested in her? She tried to remind herself that she wasn't a musician, not anymore. But the idea of exploring that world again intrigued her. After much deliberation, Laura decided to call the number. Her heart pounded as the phone rang, and when a warm, friendly voice answered, she almost hung up. "Hello?" the voice said. "Hi. Is this Daniel Harper?" Laura stammered. "Yes, it is," the man replied. "And you must be Laura. Thank you for calling me back." "Oh, yes, hi," Laura said awkwardly. "I got your note." I wasn't sure if it was really from you. Daniel chuckled. It's definitely me. I wanted to reach out because I think you have something special. Your performance at the party was incredible, and I'd love to talk to you more about it. Laura hesitated. I'm flattered, but I'm not a professional. I haven't played in years. That's okay, Daniel said quickly. Sometimes the best artists are the ones who haven't been shaped by the industry yet. I'd love to hear more of your music. Are you free to meet sometime this week? Laura bit her lip, unsure how to respond. Part of her wanted to say no, to avoid stepping into a world she didn't understand. But another part of her felt a flicker of hope, a tiny flame that had been reignited the night before. I guess I can meet, she said finally. But I'm not making any promises. That's all I ask, Daniel replied warmly. How does Thursday afternoon sound? They made arrangements to meet at a recording studio downtown, and Laura hung up the phone feeling both excited and terrified. Over the next few days, she practiced tirelessly, trying to prepare herself for whatever might come next. She dug out old sheet music from her childhood and spent hours at a small keyboard she kept tucked away in her closet. Each note reminded her of her mother, and each melody brought tears to her eyes. On Thursday, Laura arrived at the recording studio early. She stood outside for a moment, taking deep breaths to calm her nerves. When she finally walked in, she was greeted by Daniel himself. He was younger than she expected, with kind eyes and a welcoming smile. Laura, it's great to meet you, he said, extending his hand. You too, Laura replied, shaking his hand nervously. Daniel led her into a cozy room filled with musical equipment. This is where we'll be working today, he explained. I just want to hear you play, nothing fancy. Think of it as a conversation between us. Laura nodded, though her stomach was tied in knots. She sat down at the piano, her fingers hovering over the keys. For a moment, she felt paralyzed by fear. What if she messed up? What if Daniel realized she wasn't as talented as he thought? Then, she remembered her mother's voice, soft and encouraging, telling her to trust herself. Slowly, Laura began to play. At first, the notes were hesitant, but soon they flowed together, forming a melody that seemed to fill the entire room. Daniel listened intently, nodding occasionally but otherwise remaining silent. When Laura finished, she turned to him, bracing herself for criticism. That was beautiful, Daniel said sincerely. You have a natural gift, Laura. Have you ever considered pursuing music professionally? Laura shook her head. Not really. I used to dream about it when I was younger, but life got in the way. Well, maybe it's time to start dreaming again, Daniel suggested. I'd love to help you record some pieces and see where it takes you. What do you say? Laura hesitated, overwhelmed by the offer. She had spent so many years believing her dreams were out of reach. Now here was someone offering her a chance to chase them again. I need some time to think about it, she said finally. Of course, Daniel replied with a smile. Take all the time you need. Just know that I believe in you. As Laura left the studio later that day, she felt a mix of emotions swirling inside her. Fear, excitement, doubt, hope. They all fought for dominance in her mind. She didn't know what the future held, but for the first time in a long time, she allowed herself to imagine possibilities beyond her current reality. Little did she know, this was only the beginning of a journey that would change her life forever. Over the next few days, Laura found herself lost in thought. Daniel's offer replayed in her mind like a song she couldn't stop humming. She wanted to believe in the possibility of pursuing music again, but fear kept pulling her back. What if she failed? What if people laughed at her for thinking she could make it as a musician? These questions swirled in her head, making it hard to focus on anything else. Maria noticed Laura's distracted demeanor during their shifts at the Velvet Lounge. One evening, as they were cleaning up after closing, Maria finally confronted her. Okay, spill it, Maria said, leaning against the counter with her arms crossed. What's going on with you? You've been acting weird ever since that guy called you. Laura hesitated, unsure how much to share. Maria had always been supportive, but this felt different. It wasn't just about work or everyday life. It was about dreams Laura had buried long ago. I got an offer, Laura admitted quietly. From Daniel Harper, the music producer. He wants me to record some songs with him. Maria's eyes widened. Are you serious? That's amazing. It's not that simple, Laura replied, shaking her head. I don't know if I'm ready for something like this. Music was part of my past, but it's been years since I even thought about it seriously. I'm not sure I can do it anymore. Maria frowned, clearly frustrated. Laura, you're being too hard on yourself. Did you hear yourself play at that party? You were incredible. People don't just walk up to random waitresses and offer them recording deals. This is your chance to change your life. But what if I mess it up? Laura asked, her voice trembling. What if I try and fail? Then where will I be? Maria placed a hand on Laura's shoulder. You won't fail. Not if you put your heart into it. Look, I'm not saying it'll be easy. But isn't it worth trying? Even if things don't work out exactly how you hope, at least you'll know you gave it your best shot. Laura didn't respond right away. She knew Maria meant well, but the weight of the decision still felt overwhelming. Still, Maria's words lingered in her mind, planting a seed of courage she hadn't felt in years. The following week, Laura decided to take another step forward. She called Daniel and agreed to meet him again at the studio. This time, she brought some of her own compositions, simple melodies she had written during quiet moments over the years. They weren't polished or professional, but they were pieces of her soul, fragments of who she was. When Laura arrived at the studio, Daniel greeted her warmly. He seemed genuinely excited to see her, which made her feel slightly less nervous. Together they sat down at the piano and Laura began to play one of her original pieces. The melody was soft and melancholic, filled with longing and memories of her mother. As the notes echoed through the room, Laura closed her eyes, letting the music carry her away. When she finished, there was a moment of silence. Laura opened her eyes, expecting criticism or suggestions for improvement. Instead, she saw tears glistening in Daniel's eyes. That was breathtaking, he said softly. It's raw and real, Laura. That's what makes it powerful. People connect with authenticity, not perfection. Laura blinked, surprised by his reaction. You really think so? I don't just think so, I know it, Daniel replied firmly. These are the kinds of songs that touch people's hearts. If we can capture that energy in a recording, there's no telling how far it could go. For the first time, Laura allowed herself to feel a flicker of excitement. Maybe this wasn't just a fleeting opportunity. Maybe it was a chance to honor her mother's legacy and rediscover a part of herself she thought she'd lost forever. Over the next several weeks, Laura worked closely with Daniel to refine her compositions and prepare for the recording process. It wasn't easy. There were moments of frustration and self-doubt, but Daniel's encouragement kept her going. He taught her how to channel her emotions into her music, helping her transform personal experiences into universal stories. 1. Afternoon. As they took a break from recording, Daniel handed Laura a cup of tea and smiled. You've come such a long way already, he said. Do you realize that? Laura shook her head. I still feel like I'm faking it half the time. Well, stop, Daniel said with a laugh. You're not faking anything. You're sharing your truth, and that's rare. Trust me, people will hear it in your music. As the recordings progressed, Laura began to notice changes in herself. She walked taller, spoke more confidently, and started believing, at least a little, that she might actually have something to offer the world. Her co-workers at the Velvet Lounge noticed the difference too. You seem different, Maria commented one evening after Laura finished her shift. Happier, maybe? I guess I am, Laura admitted. Working on this project has made me feel alive again, like I'm doing something that matters. Maria grinned. Good. Keep chasing that feeling. You deserve it. Despite her growing confidence, Laura couldn't ignore the lingering shadow of Richard, the man who had unknowingly set this chain of events in motion. Every now and then she would see him at the restaurant, barking orders at the staff or chatting casually with wealthy patrons. Each time she felt a mix of anger and gratitude. Anger because he had tried to embarrass her, and gratitude because his cruelty had led her to discover her talent. One evening, Richard approached Laura while she was clearing tables. "So I hear you've been making quite the name for yourself," he said, his tone laced with sarcasm. Laura froze for a moment before turning to face him. "Excuse me?" "Oh, come on," Richard said with a smirk. "Don't act like you." "Don't know. Everyone's talking about you, the waitress who plays the piano. Looks like I did you a favor, didn't I?" Laura clenched her fists, fighting the urge to snap at him. "If you call humiliating someone a favor, then sure." Richard chuckled, clearly amused by her response. "Well, however you want to look at it, I'm glad things worked out for you. Just don't forget who gave you your big break." Before Laura could reply, Maria stepped in, placing herself between Laura and Richard. "Leave her alone, Mr. Richard," Maria said firmly. "She doesn't need your comments right now." Richard raised his hands defensively, though his smirk remained. Fine, just remember, Laura, good luck is hard to come by. Don't waste it." As Richard walked away, Laura let out a shaky breath. Maria gave her a reassuring smile. "Don't let him get to you," she said softly. "He's not worth it." "I know," Laura replied, though her hands were still trembling. "But it's hard not to feel angry sometimes." "And that's okay," Maria said. "Just don't let it hold you back. You've got bigger things ahead of you." Maria's words stayed with Laura long after their conversation ended. She realized that holding on to anger toward Richard wouldn't help her move forward. Instead, she chose to focus on the opportunities unfolding before her. A few weeks later, Laura completed the first draft of her album. Listening to the recordings for the first time, she felt a surge of pride. The songs were imperfect, but they were hers, pieces of her heart and soul captured in sound. Daniel promised to polish the tracks further and begin promoting them to industry contacts. "This is just the beginning," Daniel told her as they wrapped up their final session. "Get ready, Laura. Your life is about to change." Laura nodded, her heart racing with anticipation. She didn't know what the future held, but for the first time in years, she felt hopeful. Music had once been a source of pain, a reminder of everything she had lost. Now, it was becoming a bridge to a new chapter, one filled with possibilities she had never dared to imagine. As Laura left the studio that evening, she paused beneath the city lights, taking a deep breath. Somewhere in the distance, a street musician played a familiar tune. For a moment, Laura closed her eyes, letting the music wash over her. She smiled softly, knowing that no matter what happened next, she had already taken the most important step. She had chosen to believe in herself. The weeks following the completion of Laura's album were a whirlwind of activity. Daniel worked tirelessly to promote her music, sending demo tracks to industry contacts and setting up meetings with potential collaborators. Meanwhile, Laura returned to her routine at the Velvet Lounge, trying to balance her old life with the excitement of her new one. It wasn't easy. She often found herself daydreaming about the future while serving drinks or clearing tables, but she reminded herself that patience was key. One afternoon, as Laura was wiping down a table, Maria approached her with an envelope in hand. "This came for you," Maria said, handing it over with a curious expression. Laura frowned, taking the envelope. Her name was written neatly on the front, but there was no return address. She opened it cautiously and pulled out a letter. As she read the words inside, her heart began to race. "Dear Laura, we are thrilled to inform you that your music has caught the attention of several prominent figures in the industry. Enclosed is an invitation to perform at an upcoming showcase event hosted by Chicago's Arts Council. This is a wonderful opportunity to share your talent with a wider audience. Please let us know if you're available to attend. Sincerely, Daniel Harper." Laura looked up at Maria, who was watching her expectantly. "What is it?" Maria asked eagerly. "I've been invited to perform at a showcase," Laura replied, still processing the news. Maria squealed with excitement. "That's amazing, you have to do it." "But what if I mess up?" Laura said, her voice tinged with doubt. "What if people don't like my music?" Maria rolled her eyes playfully. Stop worrying so much. You've already proven how talented you are. Just trust yourself. Laura sighed, knowing Maria was right. Still, the thought of performing in front of a large crowd made her stomach churn. She had spent years blending into the background, avoiding attention at all costs. Now she was being asked to step into the spotlight, a daunting prospect to say the least. After some deliberation, Laura called Daniel to accept the invitation. He sounded delighted when he heard her decision. You won't regret this, he assured her. I'll help you prepare every step of the way. True to his word, Daniel arranged for vocal coaching sessions and even hired a stylist to help Laura choose outfits for the performance. At first, Laura felt awkward and out of place during these preparations, but gradually, she began to embrace the process. The vocal coach taught her techniques to improve her confidence, while the stylist helped her find clothing that reflected her personality without overwhelming her. As the date of the showcase approached, Laura practiced relentlessly, determined to give her best performance. She rehearsed late into the nights, memorizing lyrics and perfecting her melodies. Each note became a step closer to honoring her mother's memory and proving to herself that she could succeed. Finally, the big night arrived. Laura stood backstage at the Arts Center, clutching her hands together nervously. The venue was packed with rows of chairs filled with eager attendees. Among them were journalists, record label executives, and fans of local artists. Laura scanned the crowd, searching for familiar faces. She spotted Maria sitting near the front, giving her a thumbs up and mouthing, "You've got this." Daniel appeared beside Laura, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "You're ready," he said softly. "Just breathe and let the music speak for itself." Taking a deep breath, Laura nodded. When her name was announced, she walked onto the stage, her heart pounding in her chest. The spotlight felt warm against her skin as she approached the microphone. For a moment, she froze, overwhelmed by the sea of faces staring back at her. Then she closed her eyes, letting the memory of her mother guide her. She began to sing, her voice soft and tentative at first. But as the melody unfolded, her confidence grew. The lyrics poured out of her, raw and honest, carrying the weight of her journey. The audience listened intently, captivated by the emotion in her voice. By the time she reached the final note, the room erupted into applause. Laura opened her eyes, stunned by the reaction. People were standing, cheering, and clapping enthusiastically. Tears welled up in her eyes as she realized she had done it. She had shared her story with the world, and they had embraced it. Backstage after the performance, Daniel greeted her with a proud smile. "You were incredible," he said. "I knew you'd shine tonight." Before Laura could respond, a man approached them. He introduced himself as Mr. Carter, a representative from a major record label. "Miss Laura," he said warmly, "your performance was extraordinary. We'd love to discuss the possibility of signing you to our label." Laura's jaw dropped. She glanced at Daniel, who nodded encouragingly. "Thank you," she managed to say, her voice trembling. "I'm honored." Over the next few days, Laura met with Mr. Carter and his team to discuss the details of the contract. They offered her a deal that included funding for a full-length album, promotional support, and opportunities to tour. It was more than she had ever dreamed possible. But as exciting as the offer was, Laura couldn't ignore the nagging doubts in the back of her mind. Could she handle the pressure of fame? Would people still respect her if she became successful? These questions weighed heavily on her, but she reminded herself of why she had started this journey, to honor her mother and pursue her passion. With Daniel's guidance, Laura signed the contract, officially beginning her career as a professional musician. News of her signing spread quickly, and soon interviews and photo shoots filled her schedule. Journalists were fascinated by her story, the waitress turned rising star, and often asked about her humble beginnings. Laura answered honestly, never shying away from acknowledging the challenges she had faced. Despite her growing fame, Laura remained grounded. She continued working at the Velvet Lounge whenever her schedule allowed, refusing to abandon the job that had supported her through tough times. Her coworkers celebrated her success, treating her with pride rather than jealousy. Richard, however, seemed less enthusiastic. One evening, as Laura prepared to leave after her shift, Richard cornered her near the kitchen. "So you're getting pretty famous, huh?" he said, his tone dripping with sarcasm. Laura crossed her arms, meeting his gaze steadily. "Looks that way." "Well, don't forget where you came from," Richard said with a smirk. "If it weren't for me, none of this would have happened." Laura took a deep breath, choosing her words carefully. "You're right about one thing. I haven't forgotten where I came from. And I certainly haven't forgotten how you treated me. But here's the thing, I didn't need you to embarrass me to find my talent. All I needed was a little faith in myself." Richard's smirk faltered, replaced by a flicker of discomfort. Before he could respond, Maria stepped in, glaring at him. "Leave her alone, Mr. Richard," she said firmly. "Laura doesn't owe you anything." Richard muttered something under his breath before walking away, leaving Laura and Maria alone. "You handled that perfectly," Maria said, grinning. "Thanks," Laura replied, exhaling slowly. "It feels good to finally stand up to him." As the weeks passed, Laura threw herself into her music, pouring her heart into every song she wrote. Her debut album, titled Echoes of Home, was released to critical acclaim. Listeners praised its emotional depth and authenticity, calling it a powerful tribute to her mother. The album's success catapulted Laura into the spotlight, earning her invitations to prestigious events and collaborations with renowned artists. Yet, despite the chaos of her new life, Laura stayed true to her roots. She used her platform to advocate for struggling musicians and workers, sharing her story to inspire others to chase their dreams. One evening, as Laura sat alone in her apartment, she picked up her phone and scrolled through photos from the past year. There was a picture of her and Maria laughing at the Velvet Lounge, another of her standing on stage after her showcase performance, and a recent shot of her holding her album cover. Tears welled up in her eyes as she realized how far she had come. Music had once been a source of pain, a reminder of everything she had lost. Now it was a beacon of hope, lighting the path to a future she had never imagined possible. Laura smiled softly, closing her eyes and letting the memories wash over her. No matter what challenges lay ahead, she knew she had the strength to face them. After all, she had already proven that even in the darkest moments, a spark of light could emerge, transforming pain into purpose and dreams into reality. Laura's rise to fame was both exhilarating and overwhelming. Her debut album, Echoes of Home, had struck a chord with listeners around the world. Critics praised its emotional depth, calling it a masterpiece of vulnerability and resilience. Fans flooded social media with messages, sharing how her music had touched their lives. For Laura, the outpouring of love and support was humbling, but it also came with challenges she hadn't anticipated. The demands of her new life were relentless. Interviews, photo shoots, and promotional events filled her days, leaving little time for rest or reflection. She traveled frequently, performing at concerts and festivals in cities she'd never even dreamed of visiting. While the whirlwind of activity was exciting, it sometimes left her feeling disconnected from the person she used to be. One evening, after finishing a sold-out concert in New York City, Laura sat alone in her hotel room, staring out the window at the glittering skyline. Despite the applause and accolades, she felt a pang of loneliness. The bustling city reminded her of Chicago, but it wasn't home. Home was the small apartment where she kept her keyboard tucked away in the corner, the cozy diner where Maria always greeted her with a warm smile, the quiet moments when she could sit and reflect without the world watching. Her phone buzzed on the table, pulling her from her thoughts. It was a text from Maria. "Hey, superstar, how's the big city treating you? Don't forget about us little people back home." Laura smiled, typing a quick reply. "I could never forget you guys. Missing home like crazy right now." Maria responded almost instantly. "You'll get through this. Remember why you started. You're doing amazing, Laura." Reading Maria's words, Laura felt a wave of gratitude. No matter how far she traveled or how much her life changed, Maria's unwavering support remained constant. It grounded her, reminding her that success wasn't just about fame, it was about staying true to herself. The next morning, Laura attended a charity gala hosted by a prominent arts foundation. She had been invited as a guest of honor, alongside other rising stars in the music industry. Dressed in an elegant gown, she walked into the grand ballroom, feeling both excited and out of place. The room buzzed with conversation and guests mingled beneath sparkling chandeliers. As Laura made her way through the crowd, someone tapped her shoulder. She turned to see Richard standing behind her, a smug grin on his face. Well, he said, his voice loud enough to draw attention from nearby guests. If it isn't the famous pianist, how does it feel to be living the dream? Laura forced a polite smile, though her stomach tightened with irritation. It feels good. Mr. Richard, thank you for asking. I always knew you had potential, Richard continued, his tone dripping with insincerity. I just gave you the push you needed, didn't I? Laura's jaw clenched, but she kept her composure. Actually, I think I found my own way, but if you want to take credit, go ahead. Richard chuckled, clearly amused by her response. You've got spunk, I'll give you that. Just don't forget who helped you along the way. Before Laura could respond, a familiar voice interrupted. Is there a problem here? Laura turned to see Daniel standing beside her, his expression calm but firm. Richard glanced at Daniel, then back at Laura, before shrugging dismissively. No problem at all, Richard said, raising his hands in mock surrender. Just congratulating Laura on her success. Enjoy the rest of your evening. As Richard walked away, Laura let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. Daniel placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. Are you okay? He asked, softly. I'm fine, Laura replied, though her voice betrayed her frustration. He's just frustrating. Daniel nodded knowingly. People like him will always try to claim credit for things they didn't do. Don't let him get to you. You earned this, Laura. Every bit of it. Laura managed a small smile, grateful for Daniel's support. Thanks. I needed to hear that. Later that night, as Laura mingled with other guests, she found herself reflecting on Richard's behavior. His attempts to take credit for her success were infuriating, but they also highlighted how far she had come. A year ago, she would have let his words eat away at her confidence. Now she recognized them for what they were, empty boasts meant to inflate his ego. The following weeks brought more opportunities and challenges. Laura embarked on a nationwide tour, performing in venues across the country. Each show was met with thunderous applause, and fans lined up for hours to meet her after concerts. Yet, despite the adoration, Laura struggled to balance her newfound fame with her personal life. She missed her quiet routines, the mornings spent practicing piano, in solitude the evenings chatting with Maria over coffee. Even the simple act of walking down the street felt different now. Strangers recognized her everywhere, asking for autographs or selfies. While she appreciated their enthusiasm, she longed for moments of anonymity. During a stop in Los Angeles, Laura decided to visit a local park, hoping to escape the chaos for a few hours. She wore a hat and sunglasses, blending into the crowd as best she could. Sitting on a bench beneath a shady tree, she closed her eyes and listened to the sounds around her. The laughter of children playing, the rustle of leaves in the breeze, the distant hum of traffic. For the first time in weeks, Laura felt at peace. She pulled out her phone and scrolled through photos of her hometown, reminiscing about simpler times. One photo caught her eye, a candid shot of her and Maria laughing together at the Velvet Lounge. Laura smiled, remembering how much fun they'd had working late shifts and sharing inside jokes. Her nostalgia was interrupted by a soft voice. Excuse me, are you Laura? Laura looked up to see a young girl standing in front of her, clutching a notebook nervously. Yes, I am, Laura replied, removing her sunglasses. The girl's eyes widened with excitement. Oh my gosh, it really is you. I'm such a huge fan of your music. It means so much to me. It's like you understand exactly how I feel sometimes. Laura's heart warmed at the girl's words. Thank you so much for saying that. It means a lot to me, too. The girl hesitated, then held out her notebook. Would you mind signing this? It would mean the world to me. Of course, Laura said, taking the notebook and pen. As she signed her name, she added a short message. Never stop believing in yourself. You're capable of amazing things. The girl beamed, thanking Laura profusely before running off to join her friends. Watching her go, Laura felt a renewed sense of purpose. This was why she had pursued music, not for fame or fortune, but to connect with people and remind them they weren't alone. When Laura returned to Chicago after completing her tour, she was greeted by a hero's welcome. Maria threw her arms around her, squealing with excitement. Welcome back, superstar! It's good to be home, Laura said, hugging her friend tightly. Over the next few days, Laura reconnected with the people and places that had shaped her journey. She visited the Velvet Lounge, surprising her coworkers with stories from her travels. They cheered her success, proud to have played a part in her story. One evening, Laura sat at her old upright piano in her apartment, letting her fingers glide across the keys. The melody that emerged was soft and reflective, a tribute to everything she had experienced. As she played, she thought about her mother, whose love for music had inspired her own passion. Tears streamed down her face as she realized how much her mother would have loved to see her now. Though she couldn't share this moment with her mom, Laura knew her spirit lived on in every note she played. In that quiet moment, surrounded by memories and melodies, Laura understood something profound. Success wasn't about accolades or recognition. It was about staying true to yourself and honoring the people who had shaped your journey. With a deep breath, Laura resolved to keep moving forward, using her platform to inspire others and make a difference. No matter where life took her next, she knew one thing for certain. She would never forget where she came from, or the music that had carried her this far. Months passed, and Laura's life settled into a rhythm she hadn't expected. Fame hadn't changed her core. It had only amplified the parts of herself she was learning to embrace. She still woke up early, sipping coffee while watching the sunrise, and spent hours at her piano, composing melodies that felt like conversations with her own heart. Her second album was in the works, but this time she wasn't rushing. She wanted it to be more than just music. She wanted it to be a reflection of who she had become, a woman who had faced fear, loss, and doubt, yet kept moving forward. Laura also made a point to stay connected to her roots. She returned to the Velvet Lounge occasionally, helping out, during busy nights or simply catching up with Maria and the staff. They teased her about being a celebrity now, but their affection was clear. To them, she would always be Laura the waitress, no matter how many sold-out concerts she played. One evening, as Laura helped carry trays of food during a particularly hectic shift, Richard appeared in the doorway. His presence immediately made the room tense. He scanned the space, his eyes landing on Laura. For a moment he hesitated, then walked over to her. "Laura," he said, his tone unusually quiet. "Can we talk for a minute?" Laura set down the tray she was holding and crossed her arms. "What do you want, Mr. Richard?" He glanced around, clearly uncomfortable under the stares of the staff. "Not here," he muttered. "Somewhere private." Curious despite herself, Laura followed him into the kitchen. Once they were alone, Richard cleared his throat, avoiding her gaze. He paused, fumbling for words. "I wanted to say something about what happened before." Laura raised an eyebrow. "You mean the part where you tried to embarrass me at your party? Or the part where you took credit for my success?" Richard winced, looking genuinely uncomfortable. "Both, I guess. Look, I know I messed up. I thought I was doing something clever, but instead I ended up looking like a fool. And now, seeing everything you've accomplished." He shook his head. "It's impressive. You didn't need me to push you. You did all this on your own." Laura stared at him, unsure how to respond. She had dreamed of this moment countless times, imagining herself confronting Richard with sharp words and unwavering confidence. But now, standing face to face with him, she felt nothing but calm. "You're right," she said finally. "I didn't need you to humiliate me to find my talent. All I needed was the courage to believe in myself. But here's the thing. I'm not mad anymore. What you did taught me something valuable. People can try to tear you down, but they can't define you unless you let them. Richard nodded slowly, his expression softening. I'm sorry, Laura. Truly. I hope you know that. She gave him a small, sincere smile. Thank you for apologizing. That means a lot. As Richard walked away, Laura felt a weight lift from her shoulders. Forgiveness wasn't something she had planned on giving him, but it came naturally in that moment. Letting go of anger allowed her to focus on the things that truly mattered: her music, her loved ones, and the future she was building. The following week, Laura performed at a charity gala in Chicago. The event was held in a grand ballroom filled with glittering lights and elegant decorations. Guests mingled beneath chandeliers, dressed in their finest attire. Laura stood backstage, taking deep breaths to calm her nerves. This performance was special. It was dedicated to her mother. When her name was announced, Laura stepped onto the stage, greeted by thunderous applause. She sat at the piano, her fingers resting lightly on the keys. For a moment, she closed her eyes, letting the memory of her mother fill her mind. Then, she began to play. The melody was hauntingly beautiful, a blend of sorrow and joy that seemed to echo through the room. As Laura played, images of her mother flashed in her mind, their late-night practice sessions, her warm laughter, the way she always believed in Laura's potential. Tears slipped down Laura's cheeks, but she didn't stop. The music carried her, weaving a story of love, loss, and resilience. When the final note faded, the room fell silent. Then slowly, applause erupted, growing louder and more passionate. With each passing second, people rose to their feet, cheering and wiping away tears. Laura stood, bowing deeply, her heart swelling with gratitude. After the performance, guests crowded around her, offering heartfelt compliments and sharing how her music had moved them. One woman approached her, holding a young boy's hand. "My son loves your music," the woman said, her voice trembling with emotion. "He's been struggling lately, but listening to your songs makes him feel less alone. Thank you for that." Laura knelt down to the boy's level, smiling warmly. "Music has a way of speaking when words fail," she said softly. "I'm glad it's helping you." The boy shyly nodded, clutching a small notebook. "Can you sign this?" he asked. "Of course," Laura replied, writing a message inside. "Keep dreaming big. You're stronger than you think." In the months that followed, Laura continued to grow as an artist and a person. Her second album, titled Rising Tides, was released to widespread acclaim. Critics praised its emotional depth and innovative sound, calling it a testament to Laura's evolution as a musician. Fans embraced it wholeheartedly, connecting with the themes of perseverance and hope. Laura used her platform to advocate for causes close to her heart. She partnered with organizations supporting struggling artists and workers, hosting benefit concerts and raising awareness about the challenges they faced. She also launched a scholarship program for young musicians, inspired by the girl she had met in the park and the boy at the gala. Despite her success, Laura remained humble. She often visited schools and community centers, sharing her story and encouraging others to pursue their passions. "Life will throw obstacles in your path," she told audiences, "but if you hold onto your dreams and trust yourself, you'll find a way to overcome them." One evening, as Laura sat on the rooftop of her apartment building, she reflected on how far she had come. The city stretched out before her, alive with light and energy. She thought about her mother, whose love for music had sparked her own journey, and about Maria, whose friendship had kept her grounded. She thought about the struggles she had faced and the lessons she had learned along the way. For the first time in years, Laura felt at peace. She had started this journey believing she was just a waitress, destined to live a quiet, unremarkable life. But somewhere along the way, she had discovered that she was capable of so much more. As she gazed at the stars above, Laura smiled softly. Her story wasn't perfect. It was messy, unpredictable, and full of challenges. But it was hers. and she wouldn't trade it for anything. In that moment, surrounded by the hum of the city and the echoes of her past, Laura knew one thing for certain. The music within her would never fade. It was a part of who she was, a reminder of where she had come from, and a beacon guiding her toward whatever lay ahead. And with that thought, she closed her eyes, letting the rhythm of the night carry her forward.